Please be seated. So I wondered this week whether, after having touched on forgiveness in the sermon last week, if I should preach on it again this week. And then I decided that forgiveness is a hard enough topic that it may warrant 2 out of 52 sermons in a year. Plus, there's this incredible juxtaposition. Every 3 years, this gospel on forgiveness falls the Sunday after the anniversary of 9/11. And so maybe the close proximity between this gospel passage and the remembrance of more than 3,000 people who died, maybe holding these things together helps highlight just how difficult forgiveness can be. Forgiveness is hard. And I'm not talking here just about forgiveness on the scale of a national tragedy. You know, many of us have experienced hurts much closer to home that are hard enough to get past. At one time or another, some of us may have felt betrayed by a spouse or a partner, cheated out of an inheritance by somebody in the family, judged unfairly either on, a work evaluation or on an exam. Or maybe we've felt kind of dismissed by someone we thought was a close friend. And that list is just the very beginning. So why is forgiveness so hard? Well, one reason I believe that forgiveness is so difficult is that so often we fail to name forgiveness as what it really is. An act of mercy, an act of grace, not a transaction of justice. We are trained to think in terms of what is fair. So we think that a wrong requires a compensatory action to set it straight, right? I mean, that's just fair. That's payback. I'll forgive you if you try to make amends and set things right. And here's the thing, yes, acknowledging the wrong that was done, amending one's life, trying to make restitution where it's possible, all those things are important. But if we wait for a wrong to be made right before we forgive, then forgiveness will never come. Because paying back a debt can't erase all the hurt that we've suffered, the loss of trust, the sense of betrayal. And some debts are just unpayable. Some wrongs cannot be made right. So in the final analysis, forgiveness is always a matter of grace. And we see this, this point is driven home in today's gospel. Matthew compares the kingdom of heaven to a king who wishes to settle all his financial accounts. And so after tallying all the accounts, the Lord calls in front of him this servant who owed him 10,000 talents. The servant couldn't pay, and so the Lord ordered him to be sold along with his family and all of his possessions. And we're told that the man falls on his knees and pleads for forgiveness, pleads for patience, and says, I will repay you everything. Matthew says that out of pity for the man, the Lord releases him, forgives him of his debt, and sends him on his way. Now, this is what it's important to know, that 10,000 talents is an absolutely unrealistic amount of debt to ever be repaid. 1 talent was more than someone could earn in 15 years, and 10,000 talents was more than the taxes paid by Syria, Phoenicia, Judea, and Samaria. So it's an impossible amount to pay back. This man's only hope is mercy, and against all odds, mercy is what he gets. Forgiveness is never merely a transaction. It's always an act of pure grace at some level. We often lose track of this, and we start to think that maybe we can deserve or earn God's favor toward us. If we live a good life, if we love other people, if we keep the 10 Commandments, or at least the big ones, then God will love us and take care of us. That's just how the equation works, right? And so then when we fall into sin, we think that maybe we can somehow make it up to God. 15 good deeds, 10 Hail Marys, stacking the chairs in the fellowship hall whenever it's needed over the course of a year. But here's the thing, we can't earn forgiveness because it's grace. Acknowledging our inability to earn God's forgiveness, and this is important, it's not about perseverating on human depravity. It's not about that at all. Instead, it's about naming the unlimited mercy of God that's there for all of us. And when we focus on that abundant mercy that God has for us, we're much more able to extend that mercy to other people around us. I do think it's also important not to confuse forgiveness with this warm, fuzzy feeling of love. There's a theologian, Marjorie Suhaki, who defines forgiveness simply as wishing the well-being of the other person, wanting healing and forgiveness for that other person, seeing that person that has wronged us as a fellow child of God who stands in need of mercy just as much as we do. Now, that may not, seeing things that way may not change that, may not bring about this warm feeling in our heart, but it may at least help us to cultivate a desire for that person's well-being. I could not remember whether I had told you this story or not, so if I have, forgive me, but it's fitting for today. This happened with a friend of mine, actually, who was a Sunday school teacher. Shortly after 9/11, a child came into Sunday school. And the curriculum that they happened to be using in Sunday school was the curriculum, it's called Catechesis of the Good Shepherd, very much like Godly Play. The central Bible story within that curriculum is the parable of the lost sheep. And we talked a little bit about that last week. It's important to know that it comes immediately before this passage from Matthew. So that's what has just been read to the people before this passage for today gets read. And you kind of know how it goes. The shepherd leaves 99 sheep in the wilderness to go and look for that one lost sheep. And when he finds it, puts it on his shoulders and brings it back. It is a story of that one sheep's great worth and also of God's immense mercy and love for us. You may also remember that around 9/11, many people began to call Osama bin Laden the evil one. So this child comes into this Sunday school class and says something about bin Laden being the evil one. And the Sunday school teacher said simply, so would you say that Osama bin Laden is a lost sheep? And suddenly that changed everything for the children and the adults in that room. Because they knew that the story of the lost sheep was also a story about them, about you, about me, about everyone. Now, knowing that we are all lost sheep in need of mercy and love, it's the great equalizer. But if we are lost sheep, then we are also all sheep of infinite worth to God. And that is also the great equalizer. It's been said that you will never look into the face of someone that God does not love. And remembering that, it might can help us take the first step toward forgiving others, and maybe the first step toward forgiving ourselves as well. Amen.